Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Nomad Studios. I'm back again with another Grit Fantasy RPG video. Today I'll be talking about monsters. Where would we be without monsters in our hobby? They provide all these rich challenges for our characters. They could provide mystery, intrigue, fear. They could provide this risk and reward experience that we all see in our games. They could be adversaries as well as allies. I think they're just a very important part of what role-playing games are. And if you're like me, I have a very fondness for monsters, and it goes back, way back to the time when I first got my D&D Red Box back in the day. I just loved looking through the pages and seeing those illustrations in black and white ink, reading the descriptions, looking at the stats. I loved my Advanced Dungeons & Dragons first edition monster manual and also the second one. Countless hours spent looking at monsters. So today I wanted to go through the Grit Fantasy RPG book and just show you how the monsters are set up. And I'm going to start. I've got the book pulled up on the left-hand side here, per usual. And I will start in the monster section, the first page in that section. Okay, this is page 59 in the book. And the basic structure of a monster is composed of 4 things listed here. So first one is the stat block, and this is the most important aspect of a monster in Grit. And I do have to mention that, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, that Grit Fantasy RPG is a GM-centric game. I built it for the GM in mind because my philosophy is a happy GM means happy players. So I tried to simplify as much as possible for what the GM has to keep track of in their games to make the game run as smoothly as possible. Okay, and part of that is a stat block, which is far more simplified compared to what a character would have. Okay, they do not have the stats of a character. They have their own thing, called the stat block. Okay, and that stat block consists of 3 things. First one is the universal aspect value. So they don't have separate stats like in D&D. They have one number that is used for every single roll that the monster is going to make. Okay, so you roll a d12 and add the universal aspect value. So in the example below here with the Minotaur, it's a +2. So every time the Minotaur rolls a d12, a +2 is added. Never changes, it's always that. Unless the GM, of course, decides to in the fly change things, which is entirely possible. But you only need to know that one number for the value that you're going to add to the roll. Okay, second one is grit. That is the health points. So just one number again. In this case, the Minotaur has 15. Now, most monsters are going to have either 1, 5, 10, or 15. A lot of them are just in that range. There's a number of them that are a little higher, but just know if you get in the 20, 25 mark, you're looking at like a boss monster. Anything more than that's like kind of crazy strong. Okay, and then the third number in the stat block is turns taken per round. So that's the amount of turns that monster can take per round. So in the case of the Minotaur, is 1 per round. You get into more powerful creatures or fast creatures, they can have 2 or 3. And let me tell you, that can be very dangerous to characters. Second thing on the list, narrative tags. This is a list of 4 words that just describe the character or the monster. There can also be, it mimics what the characters have for the lineages. So So in the case of the Minotaur here, it says aggressive, raging, grim, and protective. Those do not have any mechanical rules or anything attached to it. Those are just for narrative's sake. So just to give you a feel for what this creature is like. Okay. Instead of reading a whole bunch of words, sentences, you get that in a real concise kind of description. Okay. Third thing we have are features. So most monsters are going to have 3. Weaker monsters may just have 1. And then the more advanced deadly monsters are going to have up to 5. And I've said this in other videos, you do not have to use all of the features as a GM when you're playing your games. You don't feel compelled to use all 3 or 5 or however many it has. These are just a suggestion for what to use. Okay. A lot of times, personally, I only use 1 or 2. Depends on what's going on in the game. You just kind of have to take it in stride as you're going. Just know that that's an option, but these are just giving you options for what this creature can do. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the details of each one of these things in the example here, but the Minotaur's features are goring horns, savage axe, and charging assault. Okay. Now, if you wanted to just use the savage axe the whole time and not use anything else, perfectly fine. If you wanted to not use any of these and just use standard weapons, that's totally cool too. It's all up to you. Okay, and then the fourth one is description. So this is just a single paragraph, usually, sometimes maybe a little more, but it just gives you information that defines the characters or the monster's characteristics. Okay. So real simple, straightforward. It gives you enough to go on. And it also, I wanted to keep these minimal so that you can add stuff if you wanted to. This is just giving you that spark of inspiration about what this monster is. Okay. So that is kind of how they're broken down. And every single monster in this book is going to have a setup like this. Okay. I'm going to kind of move forward here a little bit. The next one. This is Mooks, Goons, and Bosses is an optional method for you. I think this is one of the greatest things about how the monsters work. I use this all the time. Basically, it's a tier-based setup for your monsters. So you could take any monster in the book and just simply use these 3 tiers. Just replace the stat block with these 3 tiers, and you have a super easy setup for little minions, little stronger guys, and then a boss monster. Okay, and because that's kind of a standard setup in a lot of RPG games. You got your little dudes running around, and then you've got the captains, that are a little stronger, and then you've got the boss that's just running the show. Okay, that's just kind of a standard thing, right? Not that you have to run standard games like that, but this is just giving you a really fast way to set that up without worrying too much about numbers and stuff. So once you kind of remember these numbers, you've got it set, and you can just take any monster you want and just, boom, drop it in your game, okay? So the Mook, their stat block is -3, 1, 1. And I know you're saying, oh man, -3, that's super low. But it does feel like a wimpy little dude, right? So the danger is that if you have a lot of these and they're flanking your characters, that can add up, Also, the 1 grit really makes them just a 1-hit kill. Okay, so these things are not going to last in the game. They're just meant to show numbers on the map. Now the goons are a little step up. They're just going to have a 0 universal aspect value. So you're not gonna add any roll to or any number to the roll, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about it. Just straight D12 and that's it. They have 5 grit, so they're a little more stocky. And then of course 1 turn per round. Now you get into the bosses, +3. That's like pretty much the maximum you're gonna see in most monsters. There's maybe a couple that have +4. 20 grit is pretty high, and that will definitely hold up to a lot of characters. And then the 2 attacks or 2 turns per round is quite strong. So, and then another thing to that, if you wanted to take it another step, is just a little bit further down the page here. Now I said that all monsters have these 3 features. You can break those features down and kind of apply them to the tiers. So what I've done here is shown you an orc. Okay, now they have 3 in the book, you know, in the proper description of the monster, they have 3 features. So they have savage weapons, war shield, and more orcs. So what I've done is I've made the mooks just have savage weapons. So they can't do any of the other stuff. But the goon starts with 2, so they get savage weapons and war shield. And then the orc boss has all 3. So the boss can like pull in more orcs, which thematically makes sense. So that's another thing you can do if you want to add a little bit more to it. But I did want to bring this up. The mooks, goons, and bosses is a really cool thing to add to your games. And it's so easy to do on the fly. You don't even have to think about it. All right, and the next thing I want to go into are the monsters proper, okay? So the first part of this section are the humanoid monsters, and I brought this up before in other videos. But the humanoid monsters are basically taking the lineages that the characters come from and making villains out of them. So there's 6 types listed here: assassin, bandit, cultist, soldier, thief, and thug. Now they have, each of them has a stat block, and each of them has 1 feature, okay? So there's less to keep track of with these humanoid monsters. So I envision these as, you know, bandits, bad guys that are just hanging out in more populated areas or along the roads. You know, you could put them in any game you want, but they're just the more common bad guys. So if you're looking for like a random encounter on the road along the way between 2 places, you could totally throw in some bandits, and that would make sense, right? Or have thieves in some kind of more city setting, or maybe some assassins are after them. Who knows? You know, just a interesting way to put in the lineages that are kind of against the characters, right? I won't get into the details with all their stats and everything, but again, these are rollable, so you can roll a d6 for the type and a d12 for the lineage. They're super crisp, easy to read here. There's 6 of them. And then we get into the common monsters. These are a d20 roll, of course, if you'd like to generate them randomly. So there's 20, and those are all the basic monsters you're going to, not all, but a lot of the basic monsters you're going to see in most role-playing games. So, and just to kind of show you one of those, how they're set up, I'm not going to go through all of these because there's, you know, a lot of them. Is the ghost here, okay? So you've got a -2, 5, 1 stat block. So they're not terribly strong, not going to do a ton of damage. They have 5 grit and 1 turn per round. Eerie, ominous, frightening, spectral. All right, their features are incorporeal, hard to say. They're immune to all physical intimidation and fear-based attacks. They're terrifying, which says that all targets within short range must succeed a hard valor roll or take d4 unsoakable fear damage. And then chilling aura. All targets within short range must succeed an average valor roll or suffer -3 to all rolls until they are out of range. So these guys kind of just soak up, they reduce the rolls. They can do damage, not a ton of damage, but these I can see being used in conjunction with another monster. And just to read the description, these fear-induced invoking apparitions are undead spirits trapped within the world of the living. They are tormented souls whose purpose is to cause fear and dread in those who disturb their places of rest. Ghosts are ethereal creatures and are not affected by the physical realm unless magic items are used against them. And that is the ghost. So I'm just going to skip real fast here to the grit monsters. And here you're going to see the same exact setup as the common monsters. You got a D20 table to either choose from or roll on. And these monsters are all specific to grit. They're not taken from anywhere else, so they are unique. So, and quite a lot of fun. And that is pretty much all that makes up the monsters. I don't really have much else to talk about with those. At this time, at least, that's just the basics. What I think I've been thinking about doing this maybe GM specific series on stuff, and that I may cover some stuff about how to introduce monsters in the game, sort of how to work them as the GM, and some advice with them. So, but I'll not put that in today. That'll be for a future video. So, anywho, that is all I have to say about the monsters right now. Thank you for stopping in and checking out this video. And, as always, take care and roll those dice.